The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello there, and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jameson Rabbit, of course, but this week I am trepidatious to be joined by my good friend of the show. He's the boss of the house. It's Jeff Robbins. Hi, sir.
Why are you trepidatious? Is that a word?
Yeah.
Trepidatious?
Sure. It's a feeling more than a word.
Why are you trepidatious?
You know, because it's you. You make me nervous.
I'm your mom's favorite. That's the only reason I'm here is for your mom.
You got to meet Mrs. Rabbit recently.
I'm only here because of your mother.
Yep, she made a request, said you're the best. So.
Oh, your mother seems like a lovely woman.
All right, so let's see what we have. See what we have on the marquee this week.
Let's just talk about your family members for a half hour.
We got movies to talk about, some of which we both saw, some of which we didn't. But let's get into what we have on the marquee this week, and we're going to start with the big movie in the box office. Right now, it is the new DC feature film. It's Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Right, or as Gomer Pyle would say, Shazam!
Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a hip reference.
Thank you, Hip. Directed by David F. Sandberg. This is the sequel to the big hit movie starring Zachary Levi as the title character of Shazam. It takes place after the events of the first film, where the whole family of foster kids are out keeping their city safe with the shared Shazam powers that they gained in the first movie. But the Daughters of Atlas arrive to reunite a magical staff that wields immense power and to wreak havoc for our heroes. The Daughters of Atlas are led by Hespera, played by Helen Mirren in here, sister Calypso, played by Lucy Liu, and young sister Anthea, played by Rachel Ziegler, who you might recognize from...
Dirty Dancing?
No.
Yahoo, young Einstein?
Oh my gosh, I can't turn to you for help. West Side Story. Anyways, they also want to reclaim the power of Shazam, which was stolen from their family, and they're appalled that some dumb kids have the powers that they need. And this staff that they are wielding has the power to take away the powers of Shazam from that these kids have gotten, which happens to our pal Freddy very early on. Freddy played by Jack Dylan Grazer once again. And so the family gets split with Freddy and Jimon Hansu's wizard character working together while Billy and the rest of his family are overwhelmed by these three sisters and their powers. Meanwhile, Billy Batson's Shazam faces self-doubt because, well, he's still just a kid, really, and despite having incredible powers, he gets tossed around pretty easily throughout most of this movie, especially by Helen Mirren, who is just fun, I think, as a villain. But there's dissension in the ranks amongst the sisters. Anthea is an empathetic sister who just wants to return the power home to rebuild their team. She doesn't want to punish Earth, much like her sister Calypso does. And it's kind of, there's a lot of lightning. There's a dragon in here. There's a lot of people yelling Shazam. And
That's what you took out of this?
Yeah, I was a little let down by this movie because I went into it. I really enjoyed the first movie. I loved the first movie because it was light. It was fun. This movie, I felt like they took away 80% of the comedy of the first one and the light. You see, most of that trailer is in the dark, in the rain.
Right.
A staple of bad DC movies.
Well, there's like a dome over the city, so
right.
It's hard for the sun to penetrate.
Any excuse to just make it dark and in the rain for DC. I thought that they fell into the trap of Black Adam and these other movies of we got to take the comedy bits out of it. We got to make it more serious, more dour in times. And I was left a little wanting coming out of this one. What were your thoughts on Fury of the Gods?
Well, I can't disagree with you, Mr. Rabbit, because I think you make some excellent points. But I think even with maybe the comedic elements kind of toned down a little bit, I still thought that, these characters are very, in my estimation, I think these characters are very likable. I mean, they're children at heart.
Right.
and that gives them a certain vulnerability, that gives them a certain insecurity. You talked about Shazam being insecure. That I think makes them easy to root for, and so I got invested into the characters. I mean, these movies are not necessarily a lot about character development.
No.
It's about the 50-minute action sequence that ends the movie, and I thought that went on way too long. And I'm very appreciative that whenever we do these shows, the superhero films always come first, which means that you have to explain the plot.
Yeah.
Because it's always crazily convoluted.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And really, at the end of the day, who really cares? I mean, it's mostly about the action. But I mean, the movie was predictable. As soon as you saw this Anne character talking to Freddie Freeman at school, you knew she was hiding something.
Right.
You knew there was more to that character than
Also,
met the eye.
we're supposed to believe that they're like the same age.
I suppose, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of like Steve Sanders was the same age as.
Right. Yeah.
But no, I like the cast. I
do too, yeah.
I enjoyed them. I thought there were enough comedic elements to still keep me engaged. I don't like Lucy Liu, but I thought Helen Mirren was fun.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Zachary, is it Levy or Levy?
Zachary Levy.
Is it Eugene Levy or Eugene
Levy.
Levy?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, this movie's not going to change your world. It's not going to open your eyes to some crazy new. It's not. It's a run-of-the-mill superhero movie, but I enjoyed it enough.
By the way, Zachary Levi.
Levi?
Levi.
Like the pants.
Yes. I like the character of Freddie, the younger brother, the
Sure.
one on the crutches. He's always been, I think Jack Dylan Grazer is great as him. And I was happy that we got him as his child version for most of the film as opposed to just another Shazam knockoff.
Sure.
Because I think that he's a really interesting character. And my other big issue with this was there was some really bad CGI in this movie that drove me. Every time the dragon was on screen, I was appalled at how really bad the CGI was on this dragon. I thought it was really rough looking.
I'm not good at that. I don't.
The effects on it I thought were really lacking. I thought that was half of the reason why they made it really dark when the dragon was around, because the effects were pretty rough.
For somebody like you who grew up watching Gomer Pyle, I think you'd be. I thought you'd be impressed by the level of special effects.
They never explained to me how this dragon flies when its wings are full of holes. That doesn't make sense to me. How does it maintain?
You're looking for sense in a nonsensical world.
Absolutely nonsensical. All right, what did you end up giving Shazam: Fury of the Gods?
I thought it moved along at a relatively quick pace. I left with a smile on my face and a strange.
No, don't do it.
What?
No, go ahead.
A strange yearning for Skittles. A lot of product placement.
Oh, that's right.
Skittles
yeah,
in this movie.
Yeah.
I gave it 3 stars, Mr. Rabbit.
Yeah, I gave the first one 4 stars, and this one was a letdown for me. I ended up giving this sequel 2.5 out of 5 stars.
So we're close.
Yeah, it's a mediocre superhero movie, mediocre film altogether.
I think if you are the target audience for this kind of movie, you'll enjoy it enough.
Not enough people did because it notoriously bombed at the box office.
True story.
And once again is killing another DC franchise off, I believe. Despite the cameo that they brought in for this one, doesn't seem to help.
Well, this is the DC extended universe,
Yes.
right? And they're going to evolve into the DC universe?
No, no. Basically,
Explain
they're
this
starting
to
over.
me.
They're starting over.
We got 20 minutes to go.
They're scrapping everything and starting over, basically.
They're scrapping everything and starting over?
Yeah.
With like new superheroes?
With new iterations of the same. So the cameo that you saw in this movie, this is her last time in that role. Much like the cameo you saw at the end of Black Adam, that was the last time you'll ever see him in that role because it's all bombing, and so DC has decided to just start over.
So they're going to bring like Tennessee Tuxedo back?
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love it. All right, let's move on to another film that we have on the marquee, sir. A film that you went and saw, and I sadly was unable to make it to. What do we have?
Yeah, I'm disappointed because I was looking forward to discussing this film with you, but I'll give it a go here on my own. The next film on the marquee is a movie called Inside. This is a film directed by first-time director Vasilios Katsoupas, and I hope I'm saying that name correctly.
Practice paid off. Nice job.
Thank you. I've worked on that for a couple days. Inside stars Willem Dafoe and only Willem Dafoe in a film about a heist gone very wrong. Dafoe is Nemo, who we see at the beginning of the film breaking into the skyscraper penthouse of a very wealthy art collector. When it's time to go and he's gotten the pieces of art that he's supposed to take. The security system malfunctions and leaves Nemo trapped inside, hence the name of the film. Now, why the security system going off very loudly in the only loud section of a very quiet and largely dialogue-free movie, why this doesn't attract the attention from law enforcement is anybody's guess, but Nemo is trapped and he cannot get out. Apparently, he doesn't own a smartphone either because he couldn't call anybody.
Yeah. Well, Willem Dafoe, he's got a Nokia. He
Oh,
seems like
yeah?
a Nokia guy to me.
Is that a flip phone?
Yeah, the old school, yeah.
So the movie then centers on Nemo's attempts to survive. There's very little food in the apartment, and what little water there is comes from a sprinkler system in the apartment's indoor garden. Much of the movie, not surprisingly, hinges on Nemo's attempts to escape. He tries a couple of things with no success, including setting off a smoke alarm that also brings no attention. This is not a film that has a lot of faith in our public safety system.
Yeah, I guess so.
Eventually, Nemo puts most of his attention on a skylight on the ceiling of the apartment, and that's where most of his attention to escape is focused. Sure. I think there are many ways to approach this movie, Mr. Rabbit. I think you can take it on face value. Dafoe's character is trapped inside an apartment. He's trying to get out. And maybe that's really all it is. But maybe you could read something else into it. And maybe Dafoe's character dies at some point, and the apartment is a sort of a purgatory,
Sure.
And the skylight is an escape to heaven. Now, the reason you will have time to wonder about subtexts and allegories in Inside is because this movie is so freaking boring.
Oh, no. No.
Yes, Jameson. Nothing happens in this movie. And when I say nothing happens in this movie, nothing happens in this movie. I looked at my phone countless times during
that's
this
not a
film
good sign. Yeah.
and could not believe how slowly time was passing. I felt much like Willem Dafoe, that I was trapped in an untenable situation.
Oh, that is horribly disappointing.
Ultimately, I did not hate this movie as much as I could have because Willem Dafoe, even without a script, a story, other actors to play off of, or even a volleyball to talk to, is very good. This character is going through hell in this movie, and Dafoe is able to convey so much emotion through his and struggle and misery through his face that he is really remarkable, and he is worth watching. So, in summary, Dafoe is watchable. Inside is not. Stay out.
Wow. Yeah, and this is a movie that, watching the trailer, I was very excited for because Willem Dafoe is one of my favorite actors.
He's great in this.
And watching him go mad as he does in, I think 90% of his movies, whether it's called for or not, he's like, I'm going to bring some madness to this. I thought that looked great. And I love movies that are, movies like Buried or any of these that are one man trapped inside a space. You know, I like that.
You like that
especially
thing?
when you have a great actor. Because it's all dependent on them, right? It's not dependent on anything
There's
else.
nothing else in this movie. There's hardly any dialogue in this movie.
Right. It's I'm like, oh,
he doesn't even talk to
this
himself.
is great. Willem Dafoe's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a problem. Yeah, that's unfortunate because this looked great.
I don't think most of what I've read about this movie does talk about his character going mad. To me, the character doesn't go mad as much as he just eventually just gives up. He just slowly winds down.
Sure.
Because he's suffering from lack of food, lack of water.
That makes sense.
And just lack of anything, lack of any
lack of entertainment.
Lack of entertainment. Mm-hmm. There's a security system. He does get interested in a maid that he sees through the security cameras.
Yeah.
But as a viewer, you're hoping that this maid is that they're somehow going to have some sort of interaction, some sort of scene together. Never happened. Sorry to give that away, but there's no escape for William, and there's no escape for the audience.
There's no, oh man. All right, what did you end up giving Inside?
Purely based on Mr. Dafoe, who I am a fan of, and he really is very good in this movie. I gave it 2 stars.
Okay. Could be worse, I guess.
Oh, it could be worse.
Disappointing though. I was expecting this to be a really.
It was the slowest hour and 45 minutes I think.
That's not good when you're constantly looking at your phone, being like this. Wow, I still have 40 minutes left.
Exactly. I was like, oh, this movie's got to be almost over. Oh, my God, I've been watching it for a half hour.
Exactly. Oh, boy, that's no good. All right, let's turn to our streaming spotlight. This week, we first start over on Hulu for a new film called The Boston Strangler, one of many films. Boy, if you Google Boston Strangler movie, you've got a plethora of options. But this is the new one.
I thought there was only one other. Is there more than one?
Well, there was the 1968 one, but then
Right.
there's also a zillion biographies about the Boston Strangler,
Okay.
which I found when I searched it on IMDb.
I
But
hope I watched the right one.
was Tony Curtis in it?
No.
Okay, then you watched the right one.
Unfortunately.
All right, this is the Boston Strangler from director Matt Ruskin. Stars Keira Knightley as Loretta McLaughlin. It's a film that is based around the horrific killer or killers responsible for the rapes and murders of at least 13 women in 1960s Boston. One of the nation's most notorious serial killers, the Boston Strangler, thanks, I believe, in large part to a catchy nickname that always really helps. This film looks into the investigative journalism that helped earn him that moniker from two female journalists who broke ground for a small paper called the Record American. As I say, Loretta McLaughlin, Keira Knightley's character, actual lady, was a journalist kind of fighting to break free from her editor's opinion that women belonged behind the lifestyle desk, working on fluff pieces. She got paired together with another lady who was kind of doing what she wanted to do, was able to break free and do a little bit of that. A lady named Jean Cole, played by Carrie Coon, who together, these two women kind of teamed up, refusing to be stiff-armed by the good old boys club to bring attention to these women who were being attacked and kind of being swept under the rug because no one really cared about these women just kind of showing up dead. Usually this is a story, and in the 1968 film, and many of these films, it's told through the eyes of the detectives on the case, chasing after the serial killer. It's a standard way to tell these stories of a serial killer. But here, these two female reporters are the ones, they're grilling the police, questioning the narratives and the motives and the assumed facts on this case.
They know more than the police do.
They seem to. Getting to a point where the pressure that they're bringing leads to higher-ups pressuring their editor, played by Chris Cooper, to shut them down. Shut these ladies down. What are you doing sending these broads into the cop bar to question my guys, blah, blah, blah. We get into the multiple suspects, how the police and how the media wanted to kind of lock in on one man, even when these journalists determined that the facts don't support this theory, but the police just want it to end. And these reporters are really advocates for these women who could no longer speak for themselves. There's forces that are out there to silence them, whether it's the police, whether it's people calling, trying to intimidate them, really everyone, or in the case of Loretta McLaughlin, her own husband basically trying to talk her into just stop. Just don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? Questions why she's so adamant to get into this. And I thought Keira Knightley was really good in this as the no-nonsense reporter, driven to keep asking questions. Chris Cooper I always enjoy. He's the editor.
The irascible editor.
Yeah. He's
rough, but
he's perfect in that. He's been doing that forever. And then, the mystery has never truly been solved. There's always still theories going on about who actually did these 13 killings or multiple people. Albert DeSalvo is on and off again, always been the guy who's pointed to. And he's played in here by David Dastmalchian.
Sure, why not?
Who, in everything he does, is just creepy. He just creeps me out in everything. Just the look on his face. I enjoyed that. Yeah, what's that?
Kind of like Bill Baker.
Yeah, kind of he's a Bill Baker type. And I like this, really kind of flipping the script on the narrative of how we get here and using these female reporters to tell the story. Very much, it's really easy to make draw the line to a more recent film, She Said.
Yes.
Right? Very easy to draw that linear line to that.
Yes.
There is a lot of that to it, but found this movie more enjoyable than I was expecting it to be.
You don't seem convinced. Seem like you're trying to talk yourself into a positive review.
I feel like I've seen 1,000 things about the Boston Strangler, so it's kind of like, show me something new. And they kind of did, but what do you think about Boston Strangler, just as a guy?
As a guy?
No. What do you think about this film?
Well, I'm prone to enjoying a movie like this because I went to school for journalism. I am interested in stories about journalism. I like movies about journalism, and journalists, getting things done. Being the heroes or heroines. But for me, this movie just didn't really work. I think the biggest issue for me, and you kind of hinted at it, is there's no sense of escalation. I mean, you get a movie like She Said, you get a movie like All the President's Men, and they're digging and they're finding something, and they're digging a little more and they're finding something else, and things are getting hotter and hotter, and
ramp it up.
The story is really escalating. And here, there's no payoff, and because it's partially because in the case of the real Boston Strangler,
Right.
there was never really
The resolution never comes.
The resolution never comes.
Yeah.
This Albert DeSalvo guy the DNA evidence was only tied to one of the 13 murders.
Right.
So there's various theories about what happened or who was involved or who's guilty or who's not guilty. It's talked about in this movie or shown in this movie that DeSalvo was kind of pressured. He was coached to give a confession.
I did like that portion of it, of them like, you cops are just trying to find a guy to fit your theory.
Sure.
Or fit a theory to fit your guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the cops are heavily criticized throughout this movie by these female reporters, and
we just want this case to wrap up.
They just want the case to wrap up. Yeah. They're kind of botching the investigation. So there's not really the payoff, and to the film's credit, I guess that keeps the realism. I mean, that's what really happened, and they didn't make up some sort of resolution that never existed. But I think the movie lacks a payoff, and I just felt like really nothing of interest, happened in this movie. I mean, everything is very predictable. The women are treated. There's a lot of sexism in the movie.
Sure. It's 1960s Boston.
Sure. What are you doing? Just go review your toaster and shut up.
Right.
And okay, fine.
Do you think
you do it on your own time, and then eventually. Well, go ahead. Ask me the question.
I was going to say, do you think it would have helped to, because the killings in this movie are kind of secondary. It's not like gory killings or anything like that. Do you think it would have helped to really start to show more of the Boston
Did you read
Strangler?
my notes?
No, but the terror that he struck in the city?
I got it in my notes. Usually I'm not for that sort of element in a movie, just gore for gore's sake. But this movie was just, to me, it was just kind of a slog of just.
I think it was missing that.
It was missing something to wake this movie out of its days, because there was just the tone of this movie was just sort of like, at a 5 throughout the whole thing. And there were no peaks and valleys. It was just sort of. So yeah, I do think that a couple good, scary, creepy scenes would have helped the movie.
I agree.
I did like Chris Cooper. You mentioned I thought he was good. His role is kind of predictable, but he's kind of the
serviceable is what he
irascible guy. And then he says, "All right, I think these girls are onto something here."
Right.
And you mentioned the husband. I mean, that's a very predictable character. Of course, he's going to get upset that the Keira Knightley character is not home, and the kids. Where's my dinner? The kids need a bath, that kind of thing. So I just this movie was just kind of eh.
Well, what kind of score did you give Boston Strangler?
I think I gave it an score of 2.
All
2
right.
stars.
That checks out. Also, no Boston accents in this movie. It's 1960s Boston. What the heck's going on? Where's the accents?
I think some people were trying, and I feel like Keira Knightley was trying in some scenes, but then it wasn't a straight through line.
Chris Cooper needed a Boston accent. I mean, he needed to really lean into that. He's an old school editor. The cops need to have more of them. I did enjoy more of it. It's not something like Zodiac, one of the great serial killer movies.
Right.
But,
or 7.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it enough. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5. It's entertaining enough. Nothing amazing, though. All right, let's move into our final film that we have for our streaming spotlight. Sir, I turn to you for Netflix. We had another movie. What are we talking about?
Well, Jameson Rabbit, we are talking about The Magician's Elephant. The Magician's Elephant is an animated film directed by Wendy Rogers, based on the 2009 novel by Kate DiCamillo. I hope I'm pronouncing that one right. The film features Noah Jupe, of course I hope I'm pronouncing that right as well, as the voice of Peter. Peter is a child being raised in a dingy, depressing village by an old soldier voiced by the always sexy Mandy Patinkin, who saved his life during a war. I don't remember what war it was, to be honest. Peter is convinced that his sister, who he has been told by this old soldier character, he's been told that his sister is dead. Peter's convinced that his sister is alive, and he's made it his life's mission to find his sister. One day, while out buying stale bread and small fish from a local vendor, Peter comes across a fortune teller who tells him that an elephant will lead him to his sister. Now, as implausible as this might sound, an elephant does appear in the village at a magician's magician's show. Peter is determined to own the elephant, convinced it will lead him to his sister, and a visiting king tells him he can have the elephant if he can complete 3 impossible tasks. Now, not to put my co-host here on the spot, but I think you would have to have a heart of stone, Mr. Rabbit, not to root for Peter and his quest. Now, there's nothing enormously groundbreaking or spectacular in this film. And the ending, of course, is completely predictable. But the story is good. The characters, especially the character of the king. And
my favorite part.
Forgot to make a note of who played him, but I'm sure you have it in your notes.
Asif Manvi.
Thank you. He's a really fun character. And, the ending is emotionally satisfying. I think the magician's elephant will have you rising from your seat chairs in thunderous applause clapping.
Wow. That's high praise. I enjoyed I think the king was the best part of the film. He was fun.
Yeah, he was
bumbling
fun.
king. He was great. I also liked Vilna, the Mandy Patinkin character, that he wasn't treated as a villain. He was just a guy who that's all he knew was being a soldier. And there really wasn't a villain in this movie. It was just a journey, a journey for this kid.
The villain is being hopeless.
Right. Yeah. Classic tragic beginning.
Right.
My parents and my sister are all dead.
Every animated film, the kid's character.
I thought that there were some really beautiful moments in here, especially some of the characters have memories of pre-war or even during the war. I thought those were shot. They were depicted beautifully. I thought really interesting. We also get scenes that are from the perspective of the elephant, like through the eyeballs of the elephant. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, you actually do get to care for this elephant.
Yeah, and I thought that was good. I thought the movie itself was serviceable. It wasn't spectacular.
It seems to be a theme of the show.
Yeah, it really was. I think that for me, this is kind of a forgettable animated film. It's not. I didn't think it was visually arresting enough. And it didn't provide a big emotional charge for me. I was kind of passively watching this film as opposed to being actively engaged in it. I could not convince my 10-year-old daughter to stick with me for this film.
Did she start with
Started and it was like, I lost that. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and
I enjoyed it more as it went along. I kind of went into it with a little cynicism, and then I got wrapped up into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm rooting for this kid. He's got these impossible tasks. He flies. He does something else.
He has the sword fight
He has
against
the
the
sword
giant
fight.
man.
Sure, that's cute. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was hoping I would enjoy it more, but I'm just an old curmudgeon.
You have heart of stone. Heart of stone.
Absolutely. What did you give The Magician's Elephant, sir?
I gave it 3 stars, Mr. Rabbit.
I gave it 2.5. Just got it right down the middle. Didn't stir me. At the end of the year, I'll have to look back and be like, what was The Magician's Elephant again?
Oh, I'm sure I've already
half
forgotten the movie, yeah.
All right, sir, let's take a look ahead at films that are coming out the weekend of March 31st. That's the last day of March.
It is.
We have a few films on the marquee. The first one is a film called Spinning Gold. It's a biopic about 1970s record producer Neil Bogart, who founded Casablanca Records. That's going to be coming to screens near you. Also have a crime drama called 1001, starring Tiana Taylor as a mother who kidnaps her son from the foster care system and goes on the run. Looks interesting. Over on Netflix, we have Murder Mystery 2, a sequel to the 2019 film starring Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston as PIs who find themselves wrapped up in an international abduction case. Maybe it has to do with that previous film. They're trying to find that lady who kidnapped her son. And then lastly, over on Apple TV, a film called Tetris, about how one of the world's most successful video games came to be. Stars Taron Egerton in the lead role of that. Looks really interesting there. Before we move any further, we want to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters, The Palace here in Sun Prairie. Thank you for always being so wonderful to us, providing dream loungers to sit in and movies to watch. We do love The Palace. Next week, I'm going to be talking about such films as John Wick Chapter 4, The Estate, A Good Person, maybe something else, probably something else as well. But you have to stay tuned to find out what else I'm talking about and who I'm talking about it with.
You don't have a co-host yet for that one?
We'll see.
Okay.
We will see.
I'll be out of town.
Feelers are out.
Okay.
But until that time, I'm Jameson.
Hey, I'm Jeff.
Thank you for joining us, sir.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. See you next week.